welcome to another episode of the Chaos Chronicles.
Navigating the randomness.
I'm Jess.
I'm Connie.
And today we are going to be going over Chapter 4 of Twilight.
Yes. Also, you may notice we have some additional furry friends with us today. We've got two little pups here with us, just temporarily staying. But yeah, if you see our hands randomly moving off camera, we just are trying to keep dogs contained.
Yes. Before we dive into it, real quick, you can also find us on social medias. So we are currently on TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, and Instagram, kind of. And you can find us under Chaos Chronicles Podcast.
Yes. I forgot that part. I was so preoccupied with like making sure they don't think that anything like weird is happening. Like letting them know the hands off camera are for dogs, but not the regular ones.
You may or may not be able to see them. They're little.
They're little. We got a Yorkie and a Yorkie Boo.
Yes.
Yeah, you guys are just chill right now. Hopefully everybody stays chill, but
fingers crossed.
Yeah. All right, so chapter 4. Just as a refresher, on the off chance you didn't see us do chapters 1, 2, and 3, what is happening here is Jess has not seen the movie. You haven't actually seen the movies, have you? Well, you
technically no. They're like on the background. I never paid attention during them.
Exactly. Okay, so not really watched. Also, she's never read the books. So this is her first time reading it through and reacting to it, whereas I have seen the movies. I read the books when they first came out and got like super into them. Not the crazy Team Edward, Team Jacob crazy. Not that. So now Jess is going through and we are just going down this nice little memory lane for me and first time reaction for her.
Yeah. By the way, to give you guys a heads up if you don't know, I am not Team Edward.
She's not. It doesn't mean she's Team Jacob. It just means you really, really don't like Edward so far.
I really dislike Edward. That is all that means.
It's valid. He comes off as a real jerk in the first couple of chapters.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Very much so. Yeah. So then the quick summary up to this point is that Edward and Bella have met. Bella now is aware of the Cullens, their reputation, and she can't figure out exactly why Edward is being so mean to her. And there is a incident where Bella is almost crushed by Tyler. Yes, Tyler, who slid on ice in his truck. And as she's about to be pinned between her truck and his, Edward comes across the parking lot and saves her. And so now, if I'm remembering where we left off correct, Bella is saying, what happened? There's no way you could have humanly done that. You left a dent in Tyler's truck.
He is just gaslighting
and
her.
Edward's like, you didn't see anything. You hit your head. You don't know
happened.
Anything.
I don't owe you anything.
And so that is where we left off.
Yep. All right. So chapter 4 is invitations. So the chapter begins with Bella's dream of Edward. It was dark. Edward's skin was radiating light. She couldn't catch up to him no matter how fast she ran, and couldn't get him to turn to her no matter how loud she screamed. Edward being in her dreams becomes a normal occurrence at this point, which it shouldn't.
It's a thing throughout more or less the entire series.
I figured.
Yep.
So now it's been about a month since the crash, and during that time, Tyler basically is her shadow. Essentially trying to just make up for what he did. He feels terrible. She tried to tell him to let her be because she was okay, but he just continued to follow her. Both Mike and Eric were even more unfriendly to Tyler than to each other, which was shocking. No one really cared about Edward, even though he was also involved with the crash. In biology, Edward sat as far away from Bella as possible at their table. Bella said hi to him, but all she got in return was a weak head nod that was kind of in her direction. And occasionally during the class, his fists would
clench and unclench.
I wrote that wrong. I said his fist would form a fist. His hands would form a fist. Gosh. I need to reread these sometimes.
That's all good. I mean, you're summarizing Twilight. There is no judgment.
So Mike was more than pleased to see that Edward was yet again giving Bella the cold shoulder. Mike became more confident when it came to Bella. There was a girls' choice spring dance coming up, and Jessica asked Bella's permission to ask Mike because she was worried that Bella was planning on asking him.
Yeah, if y'all haven't picked up already, Jessica likes Mike, Mike likes Bella, Eric likes Bella, Tyler likes Bella, all the boys except Edward like Bella because she's new, shiny toy.
Pretty much. Well, and also Tyler almost, killed her, so
Yeah.
there's guilty conscience there.
Quite a bit. We do. My memory of Tyler is pretty good, of him like being an endearing puppy where he just felt so bad, which he should.
I would agree. Yeah. Yeah.
I can't say I would do much different if I was a teenager and that happened.
No. Well, Bella reassures her that she will not be going to the dance. The next day, Jessica seemed quiet and kept her distance from Mike and is now chatting up Eric. Bella assumed that meant that Mike said no to the dance.
Awkward.
Very, very awkward. Mike then confronts Bella in biology with Edward sitting next to her saying that Jessica asked him to the dance. Bella starts to congratulate him, saying that they will have lots of fun together, but Mike tells her that he had to think about it because he was wondering if Bella was planning on asking him. How uncomfortable is this situation right now?
And I remember reading this section of the book and just going, oh, I really feel for Bella at this point. Oh. And Mike and Jessica. Really, it's awkward for everybody.
Yeah. Very, very uncomfortable.
Very. It is funny because I believe, if I recall correctly, in Midnight Sun, which is the final book of the series where it's the retelling of Twilight from Edward's perspective, I do believe that they actually redo this scene. And so you get
really?
Edward's perspective.
Also, speaking of Edward here, so Bella, out of the corner of her eye, when Mike is talking to her, she can see that Edward is tilting his head towards them. Bella tells Mike that he should go with Jessica. Mike asks if he had already asked someone, and Bella wonders if he thinks that she had asked Edward based on how he was responding. When Bella respectfully said no, as she wasn't going to the dance, and that Mike should go with Jessica, Mike started demanding answers from Bella as to why she wasn't going, and he starts getting pushy. Dude.
Yep.
Back off.
Yep.
Back off. She doesn't owe you any explanation. Also, I was definitely that kind of person in high school that just did not like dances.
Same.
I think I went to... Okay, what was the girl asked
Sadie
guys?
Hawkins, right?
What is that? What your school was? Sadie Hawkins? I know that's like the original. Sadie Hawkins is the original.
I'm gonna be real honest. I was not the most social involved in like high school stuff. So I think we did have that version of a dance in 10th grade.
Well, so I'm asking you like what it was called, because I know at the high school that wasn't mine. It was snow days.
Oh, we did have snow days.
Oh, you did have snow? Okay,
yeah.
So at my high school it was called MORP. MORP, which is prom backwards.
Yeah, they tried to make MORP a thing, if I recall correctly, because prom was only for juniors and seniors, unless you were dating a junior or senior. But I believe they tried to make MORP a thing for sophomores, because snow days eventually got banned, because I think, if I recall correctly, I think it was actually my year, they smuggled in alcohol, if I recall correctly, and then I think a couple of people got caught having sex. I don't remember that part. Literally,
All right.
all I remember is my English teacher being the little nerdy man that he was. He wore zip-up hoodies. He had his hair curled. He was so cute, Mr. Lemberg. He was one of the chaperones at our snow days, and he had to give me a breathalyzer, and I had a mint right beforehand.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that mints triggered breathalyzers.
Do they?
They triggered this one because it went off, and I was almost like in tears. I'm like, Mr. Lemberg, I don't drink. He looks at me and he goes, I know you don't. You're okay. What do you have in your mouth? I'm like, I have a mint. It's wintergreen. Do you want some? And he's like, oh, honey, that set this off. Like, no, you go inside. You're okay. And I'm like, okay, thank you.
That's a sensitive breathalyzer. I've never heard that before.
I think I may have had like 2 or 3 in my mouth at that.
But also breathalyzers at a school dance?
Oh, no, it was the grade above me that brought alcohol in. So we were the last snow days because then someone did get caught having sex at our snow days, and that's when they did MORP the next year, if I recall. The grade above me, oh my god,
Wild.
Freaking wild. They were the reason we were pulled over on the bus home. I was in 7th grade, they were 8th graders, and the cops had to board our bus a couple times because they start like full on candy wars with Jolly Ranchers.
Oh my gosh.
And they chuck them at our bus driver, Steve. That was the ringleader of all that was one of my ex's older brother. That was the one who drove the Charger, the Batmobile.
You know, this kind of lives up to all the rumors that I heard about your school from my school.
Yeah. I will say all rumors and all stereotypes do have a little bit of origin and truth. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but they didn't have any of that in Twilight. I don't recall the Jolly Rancher Wars. Well,
nope.
I don't want to spoil anything else. I won't say anything.
All right, apparently we'll get to it. So let's see, where are we here? So Mike gets pushy. Bella notices that Edward is staring at her with curiosity. His eyes are back to black, and Bella starts to stare back at Edward. Their eyes are now locked, and neither are looking away until they were interrupted by the teacher calling on Edward to answer his question. At the end of class, Bella assumes that Edward was going to leave abruptly again, as he always does, but was surprised when he starts talking to her instead. Bella responds with, "What, are you speaking to me again?"
Yep, I do remember this. Go, Bella, go. This is one of the rare times that she has a snarky back retort to being treated poorly.
He deserves it so much. He deserves so much worse.
Yes, very much so. Go, Bella.
So Edward responds with no, and essentially to trust him again, that they're better off not as friends. Bella says too bad he didn't figure all that out earlier, as it would have saved him all the regret of saving her from the truck. Which is, I think, what we talked about last episode.
We did, yes. I brought you ahead of chapter, sorry.
I mean, it was like the same conversation.
It basically was.
Just a step further. Yeah. Edward was taken aback, wondering why she thought that he regretted saving her life, and then just says that she doesn't know anything.
Well, yeah, because you don't talk to her. Shocker. This may... Okay, I'm going to say this, and I won't say more because it'll be a spoil in case you haven't heard. Bella's not a mind reader. Just saying.
Bella don't read minds.
She does not.
So after school, all Bella wanted to do was to run to her car, avoid everyone, and leave. When she reached her truck, she is surprised to see Eric is waiting for her. Okay, can I just, real quick, this whole episode with the dance is just so cringy, and I really just I was so uncomfortable reading all of it. All of it.
I mean, props to Stephanie Myers, the author, because she's nailing the awkward horribleness of high school. Like, I do remember the uncomfortableness of who's going to get asked to this dance or not this, or what, or God forbid, if you're dating somebody, at least you knew you were good, but then if they didn't want to go and it, I would never, you could not pay me to go back and relive high school.
No, gosh, no.
No. The only thing I'd maybe be okay with reliving would be band, because we just talked about this before this episode, where like
if I could go back to the days of band, that would be fun.
I would love to be in an adult. Well, I know there's adult bands, but like it's at a level for most of those that I'm like, I don't have the time commitment for that. Whereas at least with like high school band, it was, you were there every day, but it didn't require you to have hours and hours and hours of practice.
Yep.
I mean, you're supposed to for some things, but
nah. Let's be honest, I only practiced the piano. My flute never got picked up outside of class.
Well, I was taking piano lessons. So Jess was a flute player, flautist, technically is right. Technically, yeah. And I was a pianist and a percussionist. So I was taking piano lessons, and therefore I was like, I play all the piano-based stuff in percussion, so I got my practice through lessons.
I think the only time, like aside from middle school, because you had to, at least for my middle school that I went to, we had forms that we had to have our parents fill out. We practiced this amount every day.
I learned how to forge my parents' signature in 5th grade, I think, on my daily planners.
If you have seen my mom's signature, you ain't forging that at all.
Why does that not surprise me? My mom's is really hard to forge too. I never actually got it.
It's like every single letter, but it's like super curvy and like obviously it's cursive, but like an elaborate cursive that's almost like
calligraphy.
Wow.
I can totally see that. Knowing your mother, she does not chicken scratch.
No. And she also puts her middle name in there too. And I'm sorry, I can't do a cursive G to save my life, even though that's my middle name too. I know it always looks so ugly. I know how to do it, but it just turns out so ugly.
I know how to do it, and like Jenna has my sister Jenna with a G, she has a way of writing her name, and she does a really good job, but she's also very artistic and like she's good at it, so it is very beautiful. I can't do it. I can't do it. My dad's was easy. My dad's a nickname.
Yeah.
So easy. I had that thing down pat, and I'm actually, I'm wondering if he made that an easy signature for me in my planner in 5th grade.
You could forge.
So I could.
So you wouldn't bother.
Probably. I mean, it was easy, but also it was dumb because it was like, oh, did you do your homework? Did you do your reading? And it's like, I was terrified of disappointing my teacher. So of course I did my homework. Did I do my reading? I had to get told to stop reading and go to bed. Like, it wasn't an issue.
Oh, that was an issue for me. I was not a reader growing up.
Really? Oh, no, I told you in, no, I don't think it made it into the previous episode, but where my dad's friend gave us boxes of books every summer, like big boxes, and I would love it. That's how I got so much random knowledge that I have, is because if there's a book and I'm moderately interested in it, I will just read it all. I love reading.
I always struggled with reading. It wasn't until I was out of college. It was actually COVID times, lockdown times. And I couldn't do any. Obviously, I was working as a paramedic, but when I got COVID from a patient, I literally could barely stand. So that's when I discovered books, essentially. And I was like, you know what? I haven't read anything for fun in my life. Let's see what the hype is about. And then I read Harry Potter for the first time. Obviously watched the movies, but read Harry Potter for the first time, and oh my gosh, I was obsessed.
There is something about having that ability to read, and not for a grade or for anything else, that it can be joyful. Where if it's something that you really like, like, don't get me wrong, I can't absorb every book. Like, there's a couple books on the shelf behind me that I got when I first started my job, that's finance based, like the 12-week year and all that other stuff. I've skimmed it.
They're hard. They're hard to read.
If it doesn't hook me in. Which, I mean, I'll still read nonfiction if it's got a good plot line. Like, obviously, in the Joan of Arc episode, which should have been published. I'm not sure when this episode's coming out, but it's a couple episodes back.
Joan of Arc is published currently.
Currently, great. Yeah, so you should look at it. And obviously, you can tell I got very into researching her. But, like...
Yeah.
Oh my god, you know what's so funny? We're talking about bringing it back to Twilight a little. Joan of Arc, 17. All that she did. Bella, 17.
What is Bella doing?
I mean, not
avoiding guys.
I mean, so did Joan, but like
not as successfully.
Yeah, it's very, very funny because I'm like, they're both 17-year-old girls. And I'm unfairly hating on Bella, who's not a real person, but like Bella's making some bad decisions. Can we all agree on that so far?
Well, not yet, but soon.
Oh, good point. I know
she's saying no to everyone right now, so yes.
That's a smart decision. That's a smart one.
And she also kind of gave it back to Edward, so
smart decision.
Yeah. Circling all the way back.
Chaos crackles.
So Eric is waiting for her at her truck. He nervously asks her to go to the dance with him. Bella says that she can't and gives him the same excuse as she did Mike. And Eric leaves quietly. Like, I'm just picturing a puppy with his tail between his legs, just like walking away.
Yeah.
Eric leaves quietly, and Bella can hear a low chuckle coming from Edward, who is now in front of her truck.
Oh, yeah. And if I recall correctly, the excuse she gives is that she is going to visit her mom in Phoenix, right?
Nope.
Oh.
We'll get to it. Maybe the movie's different?
Maybe the movie's different, or I might be thinking about
something later.
Yeah, because I think there's 2 dances.
Oh.
Because I think there's the Sadie Hawkins, or the boys ask girls ask boys, whatever. And then I think there's a prom scene.
That wouldn't surprise me. I mean, it is high school. They are juniors, so probably. But apparently we'll get to it. So they all get into their vehicles, and Bella is stuck behind Edward. Tyler was in the car behind Bella, and he got out to ask her to the dance. Bella says no and gives him the same excuse, and he takes it in stride, saying, "There's always prom," and walks back to his car.
That is the most teenage boy response, though.
No.
Like, I can totally see just wearing, like, the Letterman jacket, just like, oh yeah, don't worry, always prom. It's like, you missed that cue there, my dude.
Okay, of all the 3, so you got Mike, you got Eric, and you got Tyler. Who was your favorite response?
Honestly, I'm leaning towards Tyler just because that's so cute. Mike with the pushy, I don't like.
Mike out.
You're out.
Mike's out. Kind of on my bad list right now.
He is. I mean, Eric, that was just yeah.
I just want to hug him. It's okay.
Yeah. I think I have more love for Eric, not necessarily remembering from the Twilight book, but from the Midnight Sun, just hearing a little bit more about him.
Interesting.
Then I like him more because he's not seeing Bella like the piece of meat that Mike is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which should come as no surprise with the pushy. Yeah.
No, I love Tyler's response.
Tyler is so cute.
So Bella goes home and makes chicken enchiladas for dinner. Jessica called her as she was making the food. She was very excited to tell Bella that Mike said yes to going to the dance with her. Jessica doesn't stay on the phone long as she needs to go call Angela and Lauren as well. But Bella takes the opportunity to play a matchmaker or to just get the guys off of her back and suggests to Jessica that Angela should ask Eric and Lauren should ask Tyler. And Jessica thought it was an amazing idea.
A little bit different than the movies. A little bit different because, like, Jessica comes bouncing up to Bella in the area. I'm like, oh, you're never going to ask him, just ask me, and blah, blah, blah. Which is funny because I kind of thought he was going to ask you, but... And, like, I do think this one's cute, though. And I love the little nostalgia of back when... And I barely remember this because this was kind of dying by the time that we were teenagers. of you did call each individual friend, because you didn't have the group chat. Like you didn't have that. You can maybe do like a group email, group AOL, maybe, if that was a thing. AOL was a little bit before our time.
That was a little bit before us.
Like your brothers were probably on AOL, but we weren't.
I don't know.
No, we had MySpace. Well, a little bit. We were tail end of MySpace into
I
Facebook.
had nothing, so that's why I'm like,
Oh, I had a. Technically, there was a MySpace under my name. Did you know this story? Yeah.
You've told me.
Yeah, not one that I created. And then I ended up with a Facebook.
Connie was friends with some people that were not friends to her. Let's just say that.
No, it was not a good time, that 10, 11, 12, 13. And the friends at the time thought they'd play a prank by creating a MySpace. No, 6th grade. It was in 6th grade. Played a prank by thinking it was a good idea to put my name and my address, my full name and address on a MySpace page. It wasn't good. And like one of my classmates, I remember in my social studies class, she sat in front of me and she turned around and she's like, "Hey, what's up with your MySpace?" Because you go to it and the music that plays is "You Touch My Talala, My Ding Ding Dong," which was the most inappropriate song, which I don't know why we were all obsessed with it. And I was like, "I don't have a MySpace." And she's like, "You should go home and check, because you definitely do, and it's got pictures of you." And I'm like, yeah, that one did not go well. Yeah, they had to take that one down.
Yikes.
Yeah, so that was the MySpace, which hopefully no pedophiles found that. Hopefully not.
I mean, you're here today.
Yeah, I don't live at
and
that
no
address.
one lives at that house anymore, so.
True. And now the difference is I was a lot nicer as a kid. Now if you come up to me, as evidenced by every single episode thus far, stabby stabby, stab stab, I would rather do the stabbing. So
Your second line.
Hypothetical, not admissible in a court of law.
Yep.
I couldn't go one episode without stabby stabby.
We can't go one episode without stabby stabby.
If this ever gets big enough for us to have merch, I'm totally making sweatshirts with stabby stabby.
Absolutely.
Totally doing. Or earrings. Stabby stabby.
All right. Let us know if you want merch. So while Bella continues to cook, she starts to digest what happened that day and upset with the fact that Edward doesn't even want to be friends with her. You should not be upset about that. She starts to become angry because, of course, a guy who is, quote, interesting, brilliant, mysterious, perfect, beautiful, and possibly able to lift a full-size van, end quote, would never be interested in such an uninteresting person. Okay, girl, you just had 3 guys ask you to a Sadie Hawkins dance, which is girls ask guys, not guys ask girls. Those guys asked you, and you said no. Obviously, you're interesting.
You're interesting. Also, I do gotta say, now that I am an adult and hormones are a thing, I get where she's coming from with the whole, like, it'd be nice if the really strong guy liked me, because now I'm like, I like muscles. In her boat, I probably would have been like, ooh, super strong, yes.
Yeah, I'm also putting myself in the shoes, though, of me, 17-year-old. If anybody asked me, I'd be like, okay.
Same. Well, wait, 17 was when we had a shared ex, right?
I am not counting him as an ex.
Technically, yeah. No, it's not that
I did not date him.
We didn't even know each other. We just found out later through talking. We're like, oh yeah, kind of had like a week-long sort of fling with this dude. And you were like, I had a sort of week-long fling with that dude too. And we're like, oh.
Really?
Yeah. He was a better friend because he was in percussion with me.
I didn't even want him to be a friend, so he was just kind of creepy. He turned from potential to like real fast.
Yeah, I think he went through some stuff in the later years of high school, but I also met him when we were in 3rd grade, and the only reason I remember that so well is because my piano teacher was our music teacher at the time, and she had us do a musical at the end of the year, and it was like fairy tale something, and I was Miss Muffet, as in who sat on her tuffet eating her curds and whey. Curds? I don't remember, obviously.
I don't remember.
But along came a spider, and attacked the spider and scared her away. Well, instead of spider, I guess that was decided to be too scary. He was made to be a fly, and so I was given a broom with a makeshift cardboard fly swatter over the broom end of it, the sweeping end, and I was supposed to chase him across the stage.
Please tell me you smacked him.
I did. And so that was the running joke. We're like,
Oh,
through years, even through our graduation, like I'd be like, "Sup, small fly?" He'd be like, "Hey, Miss Muffet." Like, oh, I actually, again, but I got to see him every day, so I was like, I considered him a friend. I haven't talked to him since graduation, but
no, I did not. I did not go to that school. He became like ick real fast. Like I caught the ick real fast.
I did hear that through the grapevine, so who knows how true this is, but
grain of salt.
Yeah, after we graduated, he started dating I don't remember if she had just finished her freshman year going into sophomore or was going into freshman year. Like either way, she was, I want to say like 14, 15 or 16, and he was probably about 19 or 20 at the time. And I just remember going like,
that's weird.
That's a little odd.
Okay, I do want to preface, if you're older with that age gap, fine. But there is such a difference between a 14-year-old's mentality and a 20-year-old. I don't care how mature you are.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Maybe she was more like 15, 16 when he was closer to 20.
Even still, though, you're at such different points in your life.
Yeah. No, that's even 20 to 18 is weird to me. Like but then again, I also think about who I was at 18, who I was at 20, and just vastly different people. Yeah. Which we talk about that a little in our wisdom and hindsight video. I don't remember if it made it in or maybe it was cut, but the whole like if an older guy is hitting on you when you're in high school or God forbid middle school or younger, run.
It did make it in.
Yep, it did.
It
okay,
did make it in.
Yep. Yeah, which I'm holding true to that one here.
Yeah. Ugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, not going to say his name because I don't know if any of it's true or not, but
yeah.
No, hopefully he's doing well. Hopefully everyone.
I mean, he wasn't a bad guy. He was just, he had some weird quirks.
I think everyone. Actually, that's kind of fitting with what we're seeing of the high schoolers in Twilight right now, where that junior year, I feel like that was the year everyone got really weird, like really hormonal, and became more focused on the dating. Oh, what have you done with this person? What haven't you done?
Yeah.
And like that's where it started becoming a huge thing. And then senior year, it was still going, but then at that point, it's more like college and graduation. But junior year, you're not quite at the senior level. You're not young anymore. You recognize it's your last year of like kind of freedom, sort of, before like things really have to crack down. So that's when everything gets a little weird. At least to my memory. That's when we had more pregnant folks, if I recall.
I only knew of 2 pregnant ones.
Yeah, well, that's because the ones that got pregnant at other schools like yours transferred to mine.
Yes, they did.
Because we had a daycare, which honestly I do think is a good idea. So then you can graduate, get your GED or whatever.
Yep. It is. But also, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so going back to Twilight. So Bella didn't yet have any actual plans for the day of the dance that she said that she wasn't going to because she had plans. So she was planning to go to Seattle and decided to ask Charlie if it was okay if she went for the day of the dance to get some books and clothes.
Oh, I do remember this. Yep.
Okay, now it's coming back to you.
Oh, but they made it a little different in the movie. Interesting. Okay, keep going.
Okay. So Charlie asked if it was okay if he went with her, and Bella said no. Then Charlie asks, "Are you going to be back for the dance?" And Bella says, "No."
We love Charlie.
I don't dance. And then she thinks, "You should know because I take after you. I can't dance."
Yup.
Charlie almost immediately understands and is acting like he just forgot. So the next day, Bella goes to school and intentionally parks far away from Edward's car. But somehow he appears next to her, seemingly out of thin air when she gets out of her car. Huh. Weird.
That was my attempt at the Twilight Zone theme.
It was perfect.
Thank
It
you.
was needed.
Thank you. I'm going to start my singing career next week. Thank you.
All right. So Bella calls him out on it, and Edward responds saying it's not his fault she's unobservant. Shut up. I am so sick of this guy already.
I forgot how much of a jerk he was.
He is such a jerk. This is terrible.
It's not my fault you're so unobservant.
Be nice.
Well, I'm going to tell y'all right now, if you say something like that to anyone, especially your partner,
those are fighting words, my friend.
Those are fighting. Oh, if my husband said something like that to me, that would be, I already want to knock him in the head with a pillow when he's like, "You didn't tell me this was our plans." And I'm like, "I've told you our plans for this weekend 87 times.
And that is why I got us a whiteboard calendar to put on our fridge. Because I'm like, it's been there for a whole month. Just chilling.
Oh, we've got one on the fridge, a tear-off one. I just haven't written anything on it.
Oh, well.
I should do that. But I text him and tell him in person.
It's not enough.
It's not. And even
you need something more in writing that's in front of their face.
I've looked him directly in the eyeballs and I've been like, "All right, this is the plan for Friday night. We're going to be at my dad's by this time, and then we'll do my mom's on Sunday." And he's like, "Okay." And then Friday morning, he's like, "So wait, what's the plan?" And I'm like,
one thing I found helpful, so with our, calendar, I told him, I'm like, your color is orange. If you need to know anything, your color is orange.
Smart. Okay, I will have to start doing that.
So like his work schedule in orange. If we have stuff that he has to go to, it's in orange.
Honestly, yeah, I think I should start doing that. That'd be a good one. Don't get me wrong. I love my husband. He does many, many wonderful things. Keeping track of the family calendar or the house maintenance calendar, no, that's
not their forte.
No. Ooh, which actually, I gotta make note on my calendar about when I have to put more salt in the water softener. Thank you.
Ooh, you're welcome.
I just did that, and I just replaced the air filter the other day.
And if you need to do that, mark it on your calendars.
You're welcome.
So Edward calling her out, saying she's unobservant, which no. But Bella is very observant and notices that his voice is unusually velvet and muted, and his eyes are a golden honey.
I don't remember the voice part.
Yeah, I included those because I was like, what description is that?
What?
Velvet and muted.
Velvet and mute. I'm trying to envision what that sounds like.
A soft, smooth. I can't even do it. I don't know.
Either. I don't recall any women voices being described as velvet. I'm thinking men. Now I'm thinking like
a really low, smooth,
no vocal fry.
Yeah, but like just keeping it like very like soft.
Very soft.
Almost like he's trying to put her in trance.
Oh, so a deeper version.
Is he using mind control on her, Connie? Just like
I don't know. I mean, voice techniques are mind control. But no. What is Sir David Attenborough, the one who narrates all the documentaries? If you were to just lower his voice, maybe that's what it is. He puts me asleep in a good way. We like putting documentaries on when we're going to bed.
Let us know in the comments below what you guys think they mean by that, or whose voice would you say would be this description?
Oh, I thought of one potentially. Okay, this is going to be so in left field here.
I mean, Chaos Chronicles.
Chaos Chronicles. Reserve your judgment. How much do you know about K-pop?
Like nothing.
Okay, great. Korean pop. There is a band called Stray Kids, and I've just seen their stuff pop up. I've like heard little bits of their music and like just little shorts clips. There's a member, Felix, and I can't do anything because we have mics. I'll have to show you later. He is like 5'6", tiny dude, but his
Super low voice.
It's amazing. Like it is such a deep bass. He goes lower than Avi, the old Pentatonics member, does in most of his stuff. Not like the super bass, but it's very powerful, very interesting. And I love that sound of that voice.
All right.
We got house chores, Twilight.
It's all welcome here.
It's all welcome.
We embrace the chaos.
Amen.
So Bella decides to call out Edward for causing a traffic jam yesterday. And Edward says he wanted to give Tyler a chance.
Yes. That's right. He was slowing up his car so that Tyler could go talk because she saw Tyler coming and she was like, vroom, vroom, motherfucker, I want to go. Oh.
Yep. Bella's furious as he is trying to pretend that she doesn't exist. However, Edward says that that's not true and he wanted to apologize for how rude that he was, even though not true.
I feel like one apology, just like a quick sorry, really.
Sorry for being a dick the whole time I've known you.
Yeah. Sorry for unfairly being a dick without provocation that she's aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even if I got that apology at that point, I'd be like, cool. Thank you for the apology. I am choosing not to continue interacting with you because I don't know what that was and I don't want to know. Bye.
So Bella's response, I put it all caps, this line with like 10 million exclamation marks after. Quote, do you have multiple personality disorder? I asked severely. Yes. I'm not saying call people out on it, but like this dude is insane. Yes. He goes from being like, oh, I'm gonna be so nice to you, I'm gonna save you, and now like stay as far away from me as possible, don't even look at me. What is wrong with you?
I'm gonna revise one of your statements with my own addendum. Do call people out if they're doing that to you.
Well, yes. I was more so trying to say like we're not trying to like make fun of like mental health disorders.
Yeah. Oh God, no, but don't be a dick.
Yeah. Call them out if they're being like this. But yeah.
Is that controversial to say don't be a dick? Can we all agree on that?
Don't be a dick.
Don't be a jerk. Like, I think we can all agree on this.
Be a nice person.
Be a nice person. Jesus said it. Don't get mad at me. Be mad at Jesus and then tell me how that goes.
That won't go well. So Edward dodges the question, shocking, and asks her what she's doing the day of the dance because he overheard that she's going to Seattle and wonders if she wanted to ride with him as he wasn't sure her truck was going to make it. Bella, confused, said that she can't keep up with him. She thought he didn't want to be friends. According to Edward, he said that they shouldn't be friends, not that he didn't want to be friends. And that it would be prudent for her to not be his friend, but he's tired of trying to stay away from her. What the heck? Reading this, I got so frustrated. I'm like, I just want to strangle you right now.
Very much so. Also, pause. Spider on ceiling. Oh,
I don't think that's a spider.
That's a spider. That's a spider.
So Bella agrees to go to Seattle with Edward, and he leaves her saying, you know, you really should stay away from me, but I'll see you in class. And that's the end of the chapter.
I'm trying to remember their Seattle trip.
We haven't gotten to Seattle trip yet, so I couldn't tell you. But yeah, so Edward keeps going back and forth. I don't know. I just get more and more frustrated with him every chapter I read.
Yeah. I think I need to refresh my Twilight memory a little bit, because right now what I'm remembering is more so the movies, which I know it's a little bit different, because I don't recall them in the movie. I don't recall them having a trip together. Like, I remember her talking about wanting to go to Seattle, but I don't want to spoil anything, so I think I'll just have to figure it out on my own.
I mean, I don't know if the trip actually happens or not. They just agreed to do it. So honestly, with how like
wishy-washy,
yeah, Edward is, like, I can see him canceling.
oh yeah.
Be like, sorry, it sucks to suck. You're on your own.
Yeah,
I mean, okay, anybody listening to this, I'm sure you all know that they end up together. How does it happen, though? Like, how the heck? This guy is a major dick. Like, red flag billboards. Like, field of red flags.
I mean,
Is Bella just stupid? Or
the argument is there, but well, you'll see. There's so many things I want to say, because oh god, now I will have to go back and reread. I didn't realize the movie had permeated so much of my memory. But there is a one moment where they do grow closer, and they are in Seattle because they are shopping, but I think it might be another trip, because in the movie I remember it where it's closer to prom for like dress shopping.
Okay.
So maybe I'm thinking of that.
I guess we will
my
find
knowledge.
out. We will find out.
We will find out. Oh, you know what I'm just thinking? So we did chapter 4, but we did 1, 2, and 3 last time. Did we label the episode as 1, 2, and 3, or just 1 and 2?
Well, we have 1 and 2, and then we have 3, which is coming out tomorrow.
Oh, we did 3. 3 was the long one. There we go.
Well, 3 was the first single chapter we did. And then we decided that we were going to go shorter and single, because these are going to be your guys' bonus episodes. You're welcome.
Exactly.
Whether you wanted them or not, you're welcome.
You have them. So Saturdays, just a quick little one.
Yep.
Right. Okay. I was trying to remember, because I'm like, no, I know we had 1 out, and then we had 2. Huh.
Yeah, so we have 2 out. This will be the 3rd. And depending on, how quickly I can read / how long the chapters are will depend on how many chapters are per video, or how many tangents we go on in between.
Girl, in the next couple of chapters, if they are what I think they are, you're gonna have opinions.
It's been about a week since I've taken notes on it, so I can't remember off the top of my head. So we'll find out in the next video that we do.
Yeah. Well, anything else you want to add on Dear Eddie Boy?
My hatred is growing.
Yes.
That's about it. But no one's surprised at this point.
No, it is. I'm curious, for those who have watched a couple of episodes, yeah, what is your take on everything so far? I'm very interested, especially if you've read Midnight Sun. What are you remembering of these initial couple of chapters? And I'll screen those comments, so Jess won't get to read them. I'll read them.
I'll just ignore them.
Exactly.
Yep.
Perfect. Well, last plug. Again, you can find us on all social medias. Not all social medias. We don't have a Facebook.
We don't have a Facebook.
We're not going to make a Facebook.
We barely have an Instagram.
Yeah, we're not going to make an X or a Twitter.
Nope.
No.
I'm not a tweeter.
We are not. But you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and TikTok, and technically Instagram, with the handle @Chaos Chronicles Podcast, and that's Chronicles with an S.
Yes. All right. Until next time.
Adios.
Bye.